Welcome back, Defenders. Okay, we're not done talking about North Korea yet. The videos have emerged. North Korean soldiers confirmed inside of Russia. Kyiv Post sources fluent in Korean have confirmed that the language, with an accent atypical of South Koreans, was spoken in 2 videos showing North Korean soldiers inside of Russia. If you've not seen the videos, this is one of them. These are North Korean soldiers receiving supplies from the Russians. And yes, I can hear Korean being spoken in this video. This video is fascinating. So at the 12 or 13 second mark, I think I hear the word 고맙습니다, which is the most polite form of saying thank you in Korean. But look at the height differential between this Russian and then every North Korean soldier who's lined up. These dudes are short. And up to 12,000 North Korean troops have been transferred. Satellite images show this. Seoul's National Intelligence Service, the NIS, provided evidence on Friday of what it said were North Korean troops deploying to Russia, eventually on their way to Ukraine. Here's the satellite images, and here's the map. There is a single rail bridge connecting the North and Russia, but it looks like these North Koreans leave by ship to Vladivostok. Now here on the channel, I don't read Cyrillic. I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian, but I can read Hangul. I lived in South Korea for 6 years. This is the village of Hamung, Cheongjin, and this says Vladivostok, Vladivostok. Here are the satellite images of the North Koreans lining up and then getting ready for deployment. This was provided by South Korea. This is also confirmed by Ukrainian intelligence. Budanov says close to 11,000 North Korean troops are in Russia and will be ready to fight in Ukraine by November 1st. So here's the argument I'm about to make for you. All of these North Korean men are dead. They're dead. And I'm not saying that in that Ukraine's military is going to exterminate them all. Jong Un issued this death sentence. Any North Korean man, these 10,000, 11,000, whatever, if Jong Un let them leave the country, then they're never allowed to return. These men might not know this yet, but I think they're going to figure it out over the coming weeks and months. Because they've left the Hermit Kingdom, they're dead. They're never allowed to return. And I've already talked about my previous 2 videos, the case of Oh Chung-sung. He's the son of a North Korean general, part of the elite family of Pyongyang. And this guy was stationed at the DMZ and still chose to flee, still chose to defect to the south. He was shot 5 times by his comrades at the border. A South Korean surgeon saved him, and the South Korean doctor declared this 25-year-old man the most unhealthy man he had ever seen in his life. He was suffering from tuberculosis, hepatitis B, and his intestines were covered with parasitic worms. That was one example. If you go on YouTube and you watch interviews or documentaries about North Korean defectors, all of their stories are insane. So to prove my point, what I'm trying to make in this video, I'm going to share clips from this interview done by the YouTube channel Asian Boss. This man right here is Lee Chol-un, a North Korean defector. The entire interview is 40 minutes long. I'll link it down below. But I'm going to read for you who this guy is, why he chose to defect, and then I'm going to convince you why none of these North Korean soldiers currently in Russia are ever going to be allowed to return back to North Korea. So this is the first clip. He's going to explain who he is. I worked for the Ministry of State Security, which is the equivalent to the National Intelligence Service in South Korea. On September 18, 2016, I escaped North Korea via the Yellow Sea. It took 1 day. I defected to South Korea by swimming for about 8 hours through the ocean. So you worked for the highest intelligence agency of North Korea, which makes you part of the elite, correct? I don't know if I'd call myself that. He doesn't want to call himself part of the North Korean elite. But our global audience, who might not know a lot about North Korea, might have a lot of questions for you. He responds, sure. Could you tell us exactly what your role in the agency entailed? The role of the state security officer is simple. It is to preserve the Kim dynasty. You know about spies, right? They basically dispatch spies overseas and arrest spies in North Korea. But their most important task is monitoring the North Korean citizens. In other words, their job is to control the North Korean public sentiment. Once they see any suspicious activities, they will report them and weed out the dissidents. The Ministry of State Security reports directly to Kim Jong Un. Surely not every North Korean can work their way up to such a high-ranking position. For such agencies, you have to be appointed as decreed by the late Kim Il-sung, who died over 30 years ago. Basically, if your father works for the agency, you are supposed to follow in his footsteps. That's why if a parent is a state security officer, about 80 to 90% of their children become one as well. So your whole family is from an elite background. That's correct. Do you mind briefly snaring what life is like for those at the top? So we are talking about the top 10%, mostly who live in Pyongyang. Why wouldn't they try to escape North Korea? Well, it's because they have money. They live much better in Pyongyang than they would in South Korea. North Korea is like the Roman Empire. Those at the top can do whatever they want. Because of the social hierarchy, age doesn't even matter. People in higher ranks can talk down on much older people, and you just have to take it. They would have to obey like they did towards a king in the old days. North Korea is a great place for government officials. They live in abundance, and they can eat anything they want. So the ruling elite of Pyongyang are the descendants of people loyal to Kim Il-sung from the 1950s. They have a hereditary caste system where if your father was in basically the equivalent of the FSB or whatever, the children just get the same job. So if you were born outside of the ruling elite, unless you're an attractive woman and you can marry in, you're not getting in. There is zero social mobility in the North Korean caste system. So this man always had food to eat. This man always lived in comfort. This man always had a good salary. So why did he choose to defect? Here's the next clip. I met a South Korean for the first time in 2007. The South Korean Red Cross sent rice over to North Korea via boat. Because of his job, I was able to interact with the South Korean captain and the crew. After learning about South Korea, I was surprised. It was different from the South Korea I thought I knew. I had been told my entire life that South Koreans were starving and ragged, and was a colony of the United States with no freedom. This is what every North Korean man is told from birth, that despite how difficult their lives are, it's worse in South Korea, under the oppressive rule of the fascist United States. That's how we were educated. After graduating from university, I got stationed in South Hwahhae province, where we could get direct access to South Korean television. So because of his position, he had basically a TV antenna, and he was allowed to watch South Korean television shows. As I watched Korean TV shows, I came to realize that the world was changing faster than I had imagined. And on August 15th, 2016, I watched the former South Korean president speak on the National Liberation Day holiday. She said, "The people of North Korea can come to South Korea at any time. The new world is waiting for you." I was totally struck by what she said. It was then that I made up my mind and decided to come to South Korea. So this man had been brainwashed from birth, and he lived a comfortable, privileged lifestyle. He was in the top 10% of North Korean society. And all it took was watching some South Korean TV shows, meeting a South Korean boat captain, and seeing the president of South Korea say, "You can come here anytime you want." And this dude jumped in the ocean and swam for 8 hours to escape his family and his country. So let's get into how serious of a threat to the Kim regime this is, allowing 10,000 North Korean men out of the country for the first time. During your time in the agency, are there any memorable incidents you can recall? The most memorable incident for me was our investigation into the underground church. In North Korea, the Kim lineage established the Juche ideology, that is the official state religion. It states that you are the master of your own destiny. Because this ideology is grounded in self-reliance, you're not allowed to believe in God in North Korea. So if you get caught going to church or reading a Bible, you could end up in a political prison camp. In a village called Changdong in South Hwahei province, there was an incident that had been going on since 2007. It involved around 30 underground churchgoers. In North Korea, every household must have a portrait of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il on the wall. But at that underground church, they removed the portraits and replaced them with a cross and taught people the words of the Bible. They got caught by an informant working for my agency. What happened to those people? What happened to those Christians? Those caught were obviously either executed or ended up in a prison camp. What if they're... I'm just going to pause, guys. Christianity is a capital offense in North Korea. Reading the Bible is a capital offense in North Korea. This is who the Russians are partnering with. But this is important. What if there are no dissidents? That's not the case. There's a saying in North Korea, a single spy inside is scarier than 100 of enemies on the outside. Even if it's one or two, it can pose a threat. North Korean society is a strictly hierarchical society that's divided into classes. These are the core class, the middle class, and at the bottom, there is the hostile class. They call the poorest 90% of their population the hostile class. These are people who need to be monitored and controlled. So let's reflect on this interview from a North Korean defector saying that anybody who reads the Bible or identifies as a Christian, they're going to be executed, but everybody on their family tree, on their level, will be sent to a political concentration camp. North Korea has a 3-generation purge policy, so everyone on the level above their family tree and all of their children, all those people go to concentration camps. Are there any churches or Bibles in Russia that might contaminate or corrupt these 10,000 North Korean men heading to Ukraine? Are there any televisions? Are there any smartphones? Are there Starlink terminals and internet where a Russian soldier for fun might show one of these North Korean men a video of the South Korean president speaking about how speaking what the true reality is for the average life of a North Korean soldier. And then there's Korean culture. I'm pretty confident if a North Korean man, once he gets to Russia, is able to watch Squid Games on Netflix, his head is going to explode from not understanding. How is this possible? How for his entire life has he been told one thing, and Russians have these magical devices called smartphones, capable of streaming content of their race, their ethnic group, speaking their language. And it's incomprehensible. It contradicts everything they've been told their entire lives. This is a problem. If you want to know how bad North Korean cinema or movies or music or culture is, I'm going to recommend the movie Pulgasari. This is from 1985, and Kim Jong-il, this is Kim Jong Un's father, abducted a director from Hong Kong and then forced him against his will to produce... Kim Jong-il wanted his own Godzilla movie. I'll link this down below. Everything about North Korea just gets weirder and weirder the more you dig deeper and deeper. I'm also going to link this video down below by RealLifeLore. This is a fantastic channel. How North Korea finally made it impossible to escape the country. It's very difficult to get out of North Korea. So the fact that Kim Jong Un would be willing to let these 10,000 men go, he knows they're never coming back. They're never coming back alive. Every North Korean man who is just sent to the war zone is there to die, to be used up as cannon fodder. And I don't think Kim Jong Un can do this on a larger scale. He's not going to be sending 100,000, 300,000, or 500,000. He's sending just 10,000 because it's a propaganda victory for the Russians. This is what Putin wants. And what the North Koreans and the Russians want is for everyone to panic, for everyone to scream, it's the beginning of World War III. North Korea has entered the war. On paper, they have like a 7 million man army. Ukraine should give up. Ukraine should negotiate. Ukraine should give Russia what they want today before the Mongol hordes arrive in Europe. So this headline, U.S. House Intel Chair, North Korean troops in Ukraine must be a red line for the United States. This is from Republican House member U.S. Mike Turner. He's the chairman of the House Intel Committee. He has been a fantastic supporter of Ukraine. And this is the appropriate response to put out a statement, to put out a letter. But people are asking, why isn't Joe Biden talking about this? Why isn't Kamala Harris talking about this? Why is there almost no reaction from the United States? And it's because we're having an election in 15 days. There will be a reaction after 15 days. But North Korea is doing this as a provocation. They're trying to get people to panic here in America so people will vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Kim Jong Un famously declared they're in love with each other. They wrote each other beautiful letters back in 2018, and they now have a bromance. Donald Trump only says and speaks nice things about Kim Jong Un, who, by the way, murders anyone who identifies as Christian in his country. But let's just keep moving. So yes, this is a political stunt. What difference on the battlefield is 10,000 North Korean soldiers going to make? And if Russia's taking 1,000 casualties a day, killed, captured, and wounded, 10,000 soldiers extends Putin's war by only 10 days. So we're in a holding pattern for the next 2 weeks. I know this is agonizing, guys. Polish Prime Minister Tusk says Zelensky's victory plan will be reassessed after the US election. The Prime Minister of Poland is saying, I'm not even going to talk about it until I know who wins. Is it Kamala Harris and a continuation of support for Ukraine, or is it Donald Trump, in which Ukraine's screwed, and we have to change our language about our support for Ukraine because Russia is openly working with Donald Trump. North Korea is openly working with Donald Trump to get him back in power. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. What am I missing here? Sometimes, guys, when I sit at this computer, I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience. There are no coincidences when it comes to large-scale actions such as this. The timing is deliberate. So let's move on to some other headlines. French Minister JakeBroeYT backs Ukraine's victory plan, calls for other allies to support it. This last week, President Zelensky unveiled his 5-point victory plan for Ukraine. And the first one was Ukraine has to join NATO. NATO has to give an invitation to Ukraine for them to start this process. Without any real security guarantees like NATO, these wars will never end. Russia will never stop attacking Ukraine. So France, I think, based on these statements, is supporting it. And according to Le Monde, US softened stance on Ukraine's NATO bid, potentially influencing Germany, according to sources. An unnamed European diplomat suggests that if Kamala Harris wins in the upcoming US presidential election, then Biden, before he leaves office in January, will push or offer Ukraine an invitation to join NATO. How is this going to work if there's still an active war going on? That's going to be figured out later. But once again, the next 14, 15 days, we're in a holding pattern. Nobody's going to change any policies. Nobody's going to make any decisions. Americans are voting right now. Something like over 13 million Americans have already voted by mail or voted in early polling locations. So let's talk about Putin and his politics. Putin seeks to rival Western power with a high-profile summit. The upcoming summit of the BRICS group will be the biggest in Russia since the war in Ukraine began, and comes as Putin seeks to show Western attempts to isolate Moscow have failed. And let me just play this clip for you of Putin being smug. Putin looks confident that he's about to win big in 15 days and get the help he needs to finish off Ukraine.
Когда натовцам надоест с нами воевать, это у них тоже спросите. Мы готовы к продолжению этой борьбы. И победа будет за нами.
He's so smug. He's so happy with himself. When will NATO get tired of fighting us? NATO's not fighting this war. How many NATO pilots have been shot down? How many NATO soldiers have been killed? How many NATO ships have been sunk? 0, 0, 0. But this is what Russia wants the world to think, is that the NATO alliance is weak. The NATO alliance isn't even that tough. Russia, well, they're not single-handedly, they're getting help from Iran and now North Korea, but Russia is defeating NATO. We are ready to continue this fight, and victory will be ours. This is a bluff. All indications inside of Russia is that they are struggling to recruit, struggling to equip. Their Soviet stockpiles are almost depleted. Their national wealth fund is draining. All their oil refineries are catching on fire and blowing up. Russia has serious problems, and they're so desperate. They're importing 10,000 North Korean slaves and introducing them to the battlefield, when it's going to be absolute chaos for both those North Korean men, but also their Russian overseers, who have to babysit them and figure out how to properly use them to their advantage, which I argue is not going to be very impactful. So I've got some other random headlines here for you. The first video I want to play for you, this is Russian-occupied Donetsk. They've been without running water in their homes for over 2 years now, and the Russians said they finally fixed it. Ukrainians living in the occupied territories now have running water in their homes, but it's not where they expected it.
Пошла вода в Донецке. Нормально идет вода, правда не из того места. Сейчас берем другую конфорочку, вот эту. Вот мы включаем нижнюю. И опа, тоже вода идет. Это все ладно. Ладно, там 2 или 3, но... Когда все конфорки с водой начинают бежать, вот она вода идет. Вот она тоже пошла.
Russian repair technicians are forcing water now through the gas pipelines. Something tells me if this man goes to flush his toilet, it might explode. Let's get to the bad news for Russia. Russian electronics plants reportedly on fire after a drone strike in Bryansk. The drone strikes are never going to end for Russia. Russian war criminal killed in a car bombing, according to Ukrainian intelligence. This was Major Dmitry Pervuka, and he was killed in Russian-occupied Luhansk. There is a video. I'll link it down below if you want to see it for yourself, but car bombings appear to be a more frequent event for Russian military personnel. Cargo ship capsizes in Russia's Far East, killing 2 crewmen. Just another day in Russia. U.S. sanctions Chinese firms producing drones for Russia. This is something new and something different. Chinese private companies, this isn't the government of China, but Chinese companies have been producing components or full drones and then shipping them to the Russian military. The United States had the intelligence and they issued new sanctions. China's not really happy about it, but we're entering a diverging world. And this economic partnership that America and China has had to both of our benefits the last 30, 40, 50 years is breaking down. And it's breaking down because Chairman Xi Jinping wants to go to war, wants to be a conqueror, wants China to be a superpower global hegemon. Here's the video of Xi putting the People's Liberation Army on high alert.
我命令全军各级要强化练兵备战鲜明导向，坚定不移把军事训练摆在战略位置，作为中心工作，抓住不放，抓出成效。要坚持领导带头，以上率下。
Okay, that's enough of that. It would be awesome if China was pulling a bait and switch and they were putting their military on high alert to get Vladivostok back, outer Manchuria, but probably not. I know for people around the world, China gives them a lot of anxiety because of the size of their population and the size of their economy. But there's something you should know about called the First Island Chain, and the United States strategically has been controlling the First Island Chain, Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, to box China in. And China and Russia are completely different in their geography, but their strategic positioning. Russia is food independent. Russia is energy independent. If Russia becomes isolated, they still have energy and they still have food. China doesn't have that. China is dependent on importing energy. China is dependent on importing food to feed their population. So if China ever goes to war, the First Island Chain just closes. No Chinese ships get out to export and manufacture goods to earn money, and nothing gets in. The United States Navy would never directly, or the United States military would never directly get into a war with China. It would just go to the choke points and stop all commercial shipping. China would run out of energy and run out of food pretty darn fast. China knows this, but apparently Xi is crazy. And yeah, I do think in the next 2 years, something's going to happen in Taiwan. And this is not going to be a good time for the world, but it's especially going to be a bad time for the people of China if Xi makes this decision and forces them to go to war. We'll talk more about that when it happens. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Netherlands allocates $42 million for Ukrainian drone purchases. Thank you so much to the Dutch people. Denmark pledges $350 million in military aid for Ukraine. Thank you so much to the people of Denmark. Canada has sent ammunition to Ukraine in a new $47 million military aid package. Thank you so much to the people of Canada. Russia and Ukraine exchanged the bodies of nearly 600 fallen soldiers. I guess this was nice of the Russians to do, to return these bodies so their families can have closure. And here's the good news to end the video. 95 Ukrainian defenders returned from Russian captivity, including Azov fighters and POWs who are facing life sentences in Russia. Here's one of the buses of these Ukrainian heroes coming home.
Хлопці, вітаємо вас в Україні з поверненням вас.
Дякую. Дякую. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! Слава Україні! Героям слава! Слава Україні! Героям слава! Вітаємо!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Welcome home. One more clip. This is a Ukrainian mother who was reunited with 2 of her sons who survived Russian captivity. They had spent over 2 years in a Russian POW camp.
Я вас достала! Господи, миленькие мои!
Russia will be defeated. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.